She is also assisted as a researcher to Delhi police in the famous Sohaib Ilyasi murder case. Ms. Siddhi Mittal has also practiced in Prayagraj and Hyderabad High Court. She has also publication in her name in the field of environmental law. Today, she is here to talk about the topic Section 354 IPC, which basically deals with outraging the modesty of a woman using criminal force. We welcome you, Siddhi. Over to you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you, Nitesh sir. So my topic for today is good afternoon, everybody. So my topic for today is Section 354, in-depth analysis of the Indian Penal Code. So let's start with the basic. What is Section 354? So I'll just read out to you the section and then we'll deal about the basic ingredients. So it says, assault or criminal force to a woman with intent to outrage her modesty. So whoever assaults or uses criminal force to any woman intending to outrage or knowing it to be likely that he will thereby outrage her modesty shall be punished with imprisonment for either a description for a term which may extend to 2 years or with fine or with both. So let's come down to what are the ingredients. So first I will just talk about what is the basic. The classification under Schedule 1 of the CRPC is that this offense 354, it is a cognizable offense, it is a non-bailable offense, and it is triable by magistrate. So after the amendment in 2009, the punishment for the offense, it was changed to 2 years. Earlier, it was, we can read it as, shall be punished with imprisonment for either description for a term which shall not be less than 1 year, but which may extend to 5 years and shall be liable to fine. We have certain state amendments to the section which are of Andhra Pradesh, Chhattisgarh and Odisha. So coming back to what are the ingredients here. So if we see, the first word that we see is assault and second is criminal force. So now what is assault and what is criminal force? The first, assault is defined in section 351 of the CRPC and criminal force is defined in section 350 and of the CRPC. So I'll just move to my next slide. Right. So if you can see, assault is defined in 351, which says, according to section 351 of the IPC, whoever makes any gesture or any preparation intending or knowing it to likely that such gesture or preparation will cause any person present to apprehend that he who makes that gesture or preparation is about to use criminal force to that person is said to commit an assault. So here, when we talk about assault, the main ingredient here is first, gesture. Second, any preparation intending or knowing it to be likely that gesture or preparation will cause any person present to apprehend that criminal force or any person is about to use criminal force on them. So here, the main word that we should be focusing on is intention, which we commonly known as mens rea here. The intention here. So, talking about now what is intention. So, I would really like to define intention. Every word in IPC states not only what the accused must have done, but also the state of mind of such person while doing the act. The focus here is the state of mind. Like we really know, the intention is the main ingredient in all the criminal offenses that are defined. So, the catch here in the word assault is intending or knowing it to likely that that gesture will cause any criminal force. Coming down to what is criminal force as per section 350. Section 350 criminal force says whoever intentionally uses force to any person without that person's consent in order to committing of any offense or intending by use of such force to cause or knowing it to be likely that by the use of such force he will cause injury, fear or annoyance to the person to whom the force is used is said to use criminal force on that other. So now understanding what is criminal force here, because these two are the main ingredients when we talk about 354. So criminal force, the ingredients are, the first word that we saw was uses force. Second is without consent. Third, in order to the communicate, in order to the committing of an offense, and fourth, he will cause injury, fear, or annoyance to the person to whom that force is used. So moving on, if I can give you an example here by saying that if something that my gesture here gives A or B, whoever, an apprehension that I will hurt him in any manner. So the intention here, it depends on my intention. The intention here will really justify whether the particular section of the offense is attracted here or not. Moving on to the next slide. Just a second. So I would really like to quote a judgment here, in which we really came to know what is the intention and mens rea and how is 354 attracted. So the judgment citations I will be giving, I will mail them to Nitesh sir or however it is convenient. Just a second, I think. So the Honorable Supreme Court in the case of Vidyadharan versus State of Kerala 2004, 1 SCC 215, that's the citation for the case, held that the existence, please focus here, I will held existence of intention and knowledge has to be Am I audible, sir? Hello?
You're audible, Siddhi.
Thank you, ma'am. Has to be deciphered from various circumstances since they cannot be determined like physical objects. The relevant paragraph of the judgment has been quoted in the slide. I'll just give it a read. Intention is not the sole criteria of the offense punishable under 354 IPC, and it can be committed by a person assaulting or using criminal force to any woman if he knows that by such an act the modesty of a woman is likely to be affected. Knowledge and intention, it was reiterated from State versus Sanjay and others, essentially things of mind and cannot be demonstrated like physical objects. The existence of intention or knowledge has to be culled out from various circumstances in which upon whom the alleged offense is have to be committed. A victim of molestation and indignation is in the same position as an injured witness, and her testimony should receive the same way. So it goes on. The relevant paragraph is this. So what do we have to focus here on? The lines which are in bold, which reads out as existence of intention and knowledge has to be deciphered from various circumstances. We cannot justify by it as a physical object. So we really have to keep in mind, because every case has different facts and circumstances. So we really have to judge as per the facts and circumstances that whether the intention is there to cause any criminal force or hurt the other person, so that the relevant sections can be attracted. Now coming on to what is the outraging the modesty. What is the basic concept here? So outraging the modesty of a woman. The act of pulling a woman, removing her dress, coupled with a request of sexual intercourse, is such as would be an outrage to the modesty of a woman, and knowledge that modesty is likely to be outraged is sufficient to constitute the offense without any deliberate intention, having such outrage alone for its object. So this specific definition, because outraging the modesty is nowhere specifically defined, apart the basic definition, like how do you define? So the Supreme Court here very clearly clarified that certain circumstances will also contribute to outraging of modesty. So the judgment here is Aman Kumar versus State of Haryana. The citation I have mentioned here is AIR 2004, Supreme Court 1497. I'll just read it further. Sorry. In other words, outraging the modesty, because they further clarified. So it's the part of the judgment. In other words, outraging the modesty as mentioned will only apply to crimes against women that stop short of penetration, in which events it becomes rape. So when we talk about outraging, now there's one basic very concept and people confuse it at times and they think that it's outraging. So I really want to clarify by the help of one judgment here, and which says this is a very famous and a landmark case. This is a Ram Kripal's case. I don't have the citation here at the moment, but I will give it later on. So now we have to see what is the stance of women's modesty. So Supreme Court went out to say in this relevant judgment, which I've quoted as the heading here, is that the stance of women's modesty is her sex. So I'll just give it a read. The Supreme Court has defined the term modesty in the Ram Kripal's case, wherein the accused convicted of rape sought leniency, pleading that he was at worst guilty of outraging the women's modesty under Section 354 IPC and not rape. The accused was made liable for rape, and the court said the offense of women's modesty is her sex. He may also do so with the knowledge that by doing so, he would be outraging the modesty of a woman, and any person who utters any word or makes any sound or gesture or exhibits any object with the intention that it will be seen or heard by such woman or will be intrude up on her privacy is guilty of insulting the modesty of that woman as per Section 509 of the code. Like writing letters, using vulgar language, making vulgar gestures, displaying vulgar figures, singing songs with vulgar suggestions. Here, the main ingredient here, we come back again to the word intention, because the intention here is malified. So Section 354 IPC deals with the offense which is generally known as molestation. It applies when the act of the accused go beyond causing insult to the modesty of a woman and there is clear threat of physical harm to her, which also shocks the sense of modesty. Now, before moving on to the amendment here, I can refer to certain examples for outraging modesty of the women.
Siddhi, we cannot see you and hear you.
I think her connection faltered somewhere.
Let me connect her. In the meantime, I request the participants to stay online. So speaker is just joining within a minute. I had a word with her.
Okay, sir.
I request the participants to kindly bear with us. There's some technical glitch. She'll be just there joining us within a minute.
Sir, am I audible now?
Yeah, you are audible and visible.
Yes, ma'am.
Wi-Fi got reconnected. So I'll be starting with Justice Verma Committee report. As per Justice Verma Committee report, certain modifications were made under this section. The committee had suggested that use of words, acts, or gestures that create an unwelcome threat of a sexual nature should be termed as sexual assault and should be punishable for 3 years of imprisonment or fine or both. It further went on to saying that on question of section 354 relating to outraging of the modesty of women and indecent assaults, the report suggested that 354A, 354B, 3C, and D, which we will be discussing further, must be inserted in section 354, and also opined that eve teasing was amply covered under section 509. Hello? Nitesha, am I audible, Abhi?
Yes, Siddhi.
I'm really sorry for the network glitch. So moving on, how they defined, this is the definition that was given and explained in the Justice Verma Committee report. So they went on to define what is sexual assault and how can we really explain it well to modify and explain further and make it clear on our penal code. So they read it as section 354 of the IPC code shall be replaced by the following. Section 354 sexual assault and punishment for sexual assault 1. The following acts shall constitute the offense of sexual assault. A. Intentional touching of another person when such act of touching is of sexual nature and is without the recipient's consent. B. Using words, acts, or gestures towards or in the presence of another person which create an unwelcome threat of sexual nature or result in an unwelcome advance. We can explain it further by saying, for the purpose of this section, acts shall include the display and dissemination of pornographic material. Second, any person who commits the offense described in subsection clause A of subsection 1 above shall be punishable with rigorous imprisonment that may extend to 5 years or with fine or both. Third, any person who commits the offense described in subsection B 1 shall be punishable with imprisonment of either description that may extend to 1 year or with fine or both. So this is one concept that I really wanted to talk about in section 354 because we talk about that our laws are very gender biased. So this is one aspect I really wanted to discuss in my webinar here, that what are gender neutral laws and how women can be treated for the offense under section 354 and 509. So we'll be relating it with 509 also, but we'll be focusing on how only the word man, that is being any person, how it was further clarified. So whoever assaults or uses criminal force to any woman intending to outrage or knowing it to be likely that he will thereby outrage her modesty, whoever intending to insult the modesty of any woman, utters any word, makes any sound or gesture, or exhibits any object, intending that such word or sound shall be heard, or that such gesture or object shall be seen, where chastity such woman, or intrudes upon the privacy of such woman, shall be punished with simple imprisonment for a term which may extend to 3 years or fine. These sections are not gender specific and the offender can be both male and female. The essential ingredient of this offense is the insult of the modesty of a woman. In other words, the facts and circumstances have to be considered in order to conclude whether the act caused modesty or not. So when we further discuss, we can go on to saying that the modesty outrage can be done either by man or women both. So the intention here while making this act was that modesty of the women should be outraged. It is not, it says whoever assaults or uses criminal force. It is not saying that any man. So it is a gender neutral law. The petitioner had filed, I'm talking about one PIL that was filed. So I will just read a gist of it. The petitioner, through a public interest litigation, had stated that fundamental rights guarantee equality in protection and safeguarding measures and ensures no discrimination on the basis of sex, life, with human dignity, to equality, bodily integrity, and privacy. So before moving on to this, I want to discuss this in detail. Just a second. Right. So we'll be discussing about the Law Commission of India had given a 172nd Law Commission report in 2000, March 25th. This is way back we're talking, but they had recommended that rape laws, I'm just relating it with rape because the PIL was filed in context with rape. So, but the agenda was that all the female bias laws should be made gender neutral. So the Law Commission report had suggested that the rape laws be made gender neutral by substituting the definition of rape with that of sexual harassment. Following the recommendation, the Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act 2012 was enacted, whereby both boys and girls below the age of 18 years were given equal protection against sexual offences. The Criminal Law Amendment Bill 2012 proposed to replace the term rape with sexual assault and defined victim as any person, making it gender neutral. The Justice Verma Committee constituted post Nirbhaya rape December 16, 2012, comprising retired Justice J.S. Verma, retired Justice Leela Seth, and senior advocate Gopal Subramaniam, published the report on January 23, 2013, wherein it was observed that the bill, it required following changes. I'll just read it out to you. Firstly, they said that under section 375, the definition of rape was widened with respect to the victim, making it gender neutral, whereas the definition of a perpetrator was limited to a man. Secondly, under section 354, the ambit of sexual assault was to be broadened by providing for a gender neutral definition with respect to both victim. Pursuant to this, the Criminal Law Amendment Ordinance 2013 had come, and it was published with several changes to IPC and CRPC and Indian Evidence Act, making them broader and gender neutral. However, the gender neutral rape and sexual assault laws lasted only for 58 days, to be very precise. The ordinance was replaced by Criminal Law Amendment Act 2013. And the definition of rape under the Amendment Act viewed only females as victims and males as predators. So here, the concept that was being trying to introduce, it's end of the day, it's a personal opinion, and it is a very debatable topic. But the report, the Law Commission report, was only considered for 58 days, and when the act actually came, so the word victim was only restricted to females. So here, when we talk about gender neutral laws and how we are advancing our laws in as per the social circumstances, so I really feel that we can really implement it maybe in a much more wider aspect, and maybe recorrect the language or anything, but this can be amended or added. So coming on to the next 354A, sexual harassment. So here, let's just read the section first, and then we'll go on to the basic explanation and understanding. So 354A, so it's sexual harassment and punishment for sexual harassment, which goes on to say any man committing any of the following acts. So these are the basic ingredients which I've laid down in bullet. First, physical contact and advances involving unwelcome explicit sexual overtures. Or second, a demand or request for sexual favors. Or third, showing pornography against the will of a woman. Or fourth, making sexually colored remarks, shall be guilty of the offense of sexual harassment. Further, the second part of the section says, any man who commits the offense specified in clause 1 and 2, subclause 1 and 2, or clause subclause 3 of subsection 1, shall be punished with rigorous imprisonment for a term which may extend to 3 years, or with fine, or both. And the third clause says that any man who commits the offense specified in clause 4 of subsection 1 shall be punished with imprisonment for either description for a term which may extend to 1 year, or with fine, or both. So coming on to this offense, we can see that this is as per the schedule 1. So it is a cognizable offense. It is bailable. It is actually divided in 2 categories here. So first, let's go to the basic what are cognizable offenses. Just a second, please. So cognizable offenses are defined in section 2C of the CRPC. I'll give it a read for you here, which says cognizable offenses mean an offense for which a cognizable case a police officer may, in accordance with the first schedule of the CRPC or any other law for the time being enforced, arrest without warrant. So here the police has the authority to make arrest without warrant. So in this, we can see that it is a cognizable offense, bailable, and it is triable by magistrate. Sexual harassment of the nature of unwelcome physical contact and advances of demand or request for sexual favors or showing pornography. So let's just discuss what exactly is this unwelcome gesture. So there was a very renowned case, a landmark judgment of Rupesh Hari versus Kusum Lata. It was, I'll give the citation. It is WP6, if you may please write it down, 6549 of 2016. So in this case, a complaint was made by the lady regarding sexual harassment by the petitioner. The committee has made the following observation in the following case. The committee, after going through the oral and written evidence, has arrived to the conclusion that behavior of Mr. Rupesh Hari in messaging Miss Kusum Lata on her phone with inappropriate contents against her wish is an unwelcome gesture and hence can be termed as sexual harassment within the meaning of sexual harassment of women at workplace in 2000 Act 2013. While arriving at this conclusion, the committee takes into cognizance the impact which the behavior of Mr. Rupesh Hari has caused on the mental frame of Ms. Kusum Lata, the complainant, having the potential to interfere with the work environment, creating an intimidating, offensive, hostile work environment, as she was repeatedly humiliated by receiving messages from Mr. Rupesh Hari, that too late in night. So here, the intention obviously of the accused matters. The intention here was to harass the complainant. One more case I would really like to discuss here. So when we talk about sexual harassment, one of the ingredients that we really read here, that was an unwelcome gesture. So many a times a gesture can be made not only by touching. So there was a case here, it is Rekha Kumari, I don't have the citation here at the moment, it was not available. Rekha Kumari versus Hari Prasad. So in this case, the Delhi High Court went down to saying here that the gesture is not only physical gesture, it can be any verbal or anything. So keeping in view the facts and circumstances, the intentions were very clear that the accused person had malified intention and was harassing the complainant here. So they reiterated the Rupesh Hari versus Kusum Lata's judgment. This is a 2018 judgment. So they say that they said here that the behavior of the accused has caused mental harassment to the petitioner, having the potential to interfere with the work environment, creating an intimidating, offensive, hostile work environment, as she was repeatedly humiliated by whatever he was doing or actions that he did. It was not only mere physical, it was the way he looked at her, the way some comments and everything. So this is very descriptive. I have also shared the judgment here in the slide. Let me just I'll share the judgment. I'm really sorry. Please excuse me. I'll share the judgment later on. Moving on to section 354B here, which is assault or use of criminal force to women with intent to disrobe. So coming down to basic ingredients, what is section 354, which reads out as: any man who assaults or uses criminal force to any woman or abates such act with the intention of disrobing or compelling her to be naked shall be punished with imprisonment of either description for a term which shall not be less than 3 years, but which may extend to 7 years, and shall also be liable to fine. So classification of this offense is: the punishment is 3 to 7 years plus fine. It is a cognizable offense. It is a non-compoundable offense, non-bailable offense, and triable by magistrate. So the basic ingredients. So why am I focusing on ingredients is here because they talk about the main essence of the section here, and it helps for a better understanding. So the main ingredient, as we discussed, first is assault, second is use of criminal force to any woman, and second is the intention of disrobing and compelling her to be naked. So the legislature in its wisdom thinks that there are instances where a woman is forced to strip or is forcibly stripped to put her in an embarrassing or a mortifying position without her own consent, which will not include direct touch. To bring this ambit, so therefore, if there is no direct touch, earlier it was not really covered before the amendment here, it was not covered in 354. So therefore, it was really a need to add this section, because certain times women are put in such a position that where they're asked forcefully to strip maybe, or maybe, you know, put in a position that they are really not comfortable with, and it's not their consensual act. So therefore, this section was added so that this separate crime has been provisioned after only Nirbhaya's case, so that this offense can have an ambit and can be covered also, and we do not neglect, and the accused or the offender does not get easy away by some lack or loopholes due in our law. So here, in this 354B, like we said, we've already discussed that it is a cognizable and non-compoundable offense. So just for the basic understanding, I would also like to talk about what are compoundable and non-compoundable offenses, because we really get confused at times, and there has been a lot of confusion here, because earlier it was section 354 itself was compoundable, but after the amendment in 2009, it was made non-compoundable. So if we there cannot the offense cannot be compounded here, in the sense that it cannot be compromised between like it cannot be compounded in court directly, if I may say it correctly. So if you have to if there's a compromise between the accused and the complainant, and they want to quash the FIR or get the case finished, so the direct approach now is you go and file a 482 petition for quashing for the under the inherent powers of High Court, and then you can get it finished off. So earlier, the 354 was a compoundable offense, but after the amendment in 2009, it was non-compoundable. So next comes 354C. Yeah, IPC. So let's just read here what is 354C. Any man first who watches or captures the image of women engaging in private act in circumstances where she would usually have the expectation of not being observed, either by the predator or by any other person, at the behest of the perpetrator or
Siddhi, are you there, Siddhi?
Let me check, Zoya. I think there is again some problem.
Okay.
Nitish sir, I can hear you, but I am not able to connect my video. Matlab, I really can't see my video.
Yeah, even we can't see you.
Just try connecting. Maybe you can continue.
Yeah.
Ma'am, if I'm audible, then I can
Yes, you
continue.
are audible, Siddhi. So you can continue.
Nitish sir, I've sent you my request to reconnect my video.
Good. You're visible now, Siddhi.
Sir, I am really not getting why it is getting disconnected. Because वो automatically अभी stop video पर हो जाता है and I'm not able to start my video again. So here talking about what are the ingredients here. First is the. So should I restart this or was it? Did I miss it? Matlab,
Continue from where you left.
okay. So I was talking about the ingredients. So the ingredients here in this section are first the person, any man in fact, watches. Second, captures the image of a woman engaging in a private act in circumstances where she would usually have the expectation of not being observed. Second, disseminates such image, which means spreads the image. So here also the intention here is to intentions of the accused are here malified. So that's the basic ingredient that we are talking about everywhere here. Intention is malified and it is to cause harm or outrage in any way. So here the section, the punishment after the first conviction. So there are two things in this. There are if first conviction is there, then the punishment is not less than 1 year to 3 years plus fine. But if there is second conviction, then there are 3 to 7 years plus fine. So when there is first conviction, the offense here is cognizable, bailable, and it is triable by magistrate. But if there is second conviction, then it becomes non-bailable. If you may see the table here. So first offense is bailable, and second, when there is second conviction, it becomes non-bailable. So why was there a need for this provision in the Indian regime? So there is a basic history about it. Let's just first I would really like to talk about what is the history to this section first. Right, so what do you mean by voyeurism? It is a broader perspective, implies of act of gaining sexual pleasure from watching other people while they engage in sexual activities or are naked. So voyeurism is a paraphilia that involves sexual pleasure from viewing unsuspecting individual undressing, already nude, or involved in sexual activity. It can also be defined as the habit of spying on people doing actions that are generally regarded as private, such as engaging in sexual activity or undressing. In voyeurism, the person being observed may have no connection with the voyeur in any way. This kind of obsessive behavior can also be called stalking. Stalking we'll discuss in detail, but this is a basic explanation of the section. Now coming down to what is the need for the provision in Indian regime. So the Criminal Law Amendment Bill 2013 was introduced to amend the existing provisions in criminal law with regard to improve the safety of women. There was a huge outrage across the nation following the brutal gang rape incident, the Nirbhaya case in 2012 in Delhi. Previously, there was no clear definition and scope for intrusion into privacy. The offense is usually combined with other forms of harassment or violence and is not considered a separate offense. This section's provisions require the criminal to have the intention to insult a woman's modesty. It may or may not be an act that physically endangers an individual's security. However, it may cause the victim mental trauma and fear. It is a blatant intrusion into privacy of an individual where the stalker tries to establish relations with his victim without his consent. An individual would expect that a private space, or for example his or her home, a place where he or she can assume they are not being watched or observed. A fair presumption of privacy includes both public and private areas where the victim is reasonably expected not to be detected to engage in private activities such as disrobing or sexual acts. So, like we've discussed here earlier, before the Criminal Amendment Act, we really did not have what is the clear definition of intrusion of privacy. So while enacting this section, the main agenda, the section was to actually describe, because at times women are victims to some offenses which they are later aware of. They are not even aware of while the offense is being committed. Like we've very clearly specified here, the accused person, they might not be even related, but that person is using and taking advantage of some private movements, some intimidate movements the women is engaged in. So therefore, the need of this provision of the Indian regime was that the intrusion into privacy, it just widens the scope. So this section, therefore, is a very essential section. इसमें, for example, we can victim phone. So not every time this section will be attracted, and I will just discuss one example. So if there's a scuffle going on between the accused and a victim, and for some reason the clothes of the victim are torn. So here the intention of the person was not to actually outrage any modesty or be engaged into anything which are the basic ingredients of section 354. So here this section will not be attractive because it was a scuffle, and due to that scuffle, the consequence was that the victim's clothes were torn. So if we discuss during this example, this relevant section will not be attractive. So moving on to 354D, which is stalking. So basically, stalking, it reads out to any man who first follows a woman and contacts or attempts to contact such woman for personal interaction repeatedly, despite a clear indication of disinterest by such women. Or second, monitors the use by a woman of the internet, email, or any other form of electronic communication, commits the offense of stalking. So here, provided that such conduct shall not amount to stalking if the man who pursued it provides that A, it was pursued for the purpose of preventing or detecting crime, and the man accused of stalking had been entrusted with the responsibility of prevention and detection of crime by the state. A second, it was pursued under any law or to comply with any condition or requirement imposed by any person under any law. Third, being in the particular circumstances, such conduct was reasonable and justified. So these are certain exceptions where stalking will not be really attracted, because obviously, end of the day, we talk about intentions. If we are helping figure out a crime, or if the intention is fine, it's a particular circumstance where the person is deemed and is forced or is put in a position to do something like that, then it will not amount to stalking. Second clause says that whoever commits the offense of stalking shall be punished on first conviction with imprisonment for either description for a term which may extend to 3 years, and shall also be liable to fine, and be punished on a second or subsequent conviction with imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 5 years, and shall also be liable to fine. So like previous provision, this is also divided into first conviction and second conviction. So here, after first conviction, the punishment is a little different, and after second conviction, it is extended to a term which may extend to 5 years, and fine is there in both. So by this, so I would really like to conclude my topic for today, that is the analysis for 354 of the Indian Penal Code. And in conclusion, I would just like to wind up in a very short form. Right. So the essence of women's, I would really put it in a way that the essence of women's modesty in her sex, like we had discussed in the judgment, is an attribute associated with female human being which reflects a particular class. It is a virtue which is attached to a female on account of her sex. The word modesty is not to be interpreted with reference to a particular victim or of rather it is to be interpreted as an attribute associated with female human beings of any class. So, even being a female, and while talking about 354, I would really even go out and say that this is being misused a lot of times by the females, right? So, back in 2018, there was a very famous case, Delhi molestation case, if we remember, Sarvjit case, where the complainant here had accused him of outraging her modesty. She went on to Twitter and she had accused him, and it was tried in Tisazari. And after some time, when the judgment had come, it very categorically defined that it was just another false case where the female took advantage of the situation, and the accused, he was falsely portrayed in the offense. And I would really that it really disheartens me to say that the mental trauma he must have gone through, the accused during that time, the family, it really affects a lot of things. So nowadays, what females really do is, with half knowledge, limited knowledge of law, they think that it's a very gender biased law, so they really misuse it. So it's not only when I get it that females have rights, and there are situations where these act as advantages to the person here, because the law is really clear now. Day by day we're improving, but on this other hand also, females take advantage of this female bias, gender bias laws that we have in our country, and sometimes men are put in such a situation where they're falsely accused. So let's just conclude it by saying here, so thank you so much, Nitesh sir, and I really hope, I am really sorry, it was my first webinar, so I really excuse myself if there was any goof up or anything, and due to some lack of connectivity also. So sir, this is all, and I would really like to conclude here the topic for today. Over to you, Nitesh sir.
Yeah, thank you so much, Siddhi, for the session. And it was a quite informative session from you, and you made the best efforts which you can make from your side. And it was indeed made, for everyone to learn this topic from the in-depth of the subject. So over to you, Zoya, to take up if the questions are there.
So, well, Siddhi, that was quite a informative one. I mean, I really, really liked how you presented. There are a few questions, one from me. I have a question, like when a woman is sexually harassed without having any concrete evidence, maybe because the act happened in the closed environment or without any eyewitness, how do you see this from the prosecution's point of view? Like, how do we, go in for prosecution? How do we really say that this 354 is really getting attracted in this particular?
When we talk about it being a cognizable offense, so the police, firstly, if the police is approached, like the police officer is approached for reporting of any such incident, they are firstly deemed to register the FIR. If there is no evidence or eyewitness, the presumption is always given that the story of the female has weightage, and it is for the accused to defend or establish his defense ki whatever his story is has bona fides and is correct. So the presumption is always given to the female here in cases. So that is how she, whatever she is laying down, that's the version of story by little evidence, because it's not just maybe once that has happened, maybe it's a series of events, maybe there have been gestures, maybe there are some chats which can corroborate or relate, because we, end of the day, we have to get down to the bottom of the story, and it is a complete story. It doesn't happen in a day or anything. So the presumption is always in the female's favor in the.
Okay, just the way it's in rape.
Yes, ma'am.
So advocate Sangkrito, he asks, any benchmark you believe that interprets what's modesty? It is misused in many such instances as that outraging modesty is open to n number of interpretations in light of Aman Kumar versus State of Haryana judgment.
Yes, sir, I've discussed this judgment also, and also I've discussed Ram Kripal's judgment, where they actually described what is outraging the modesty of women. So, sir, in this judgment, I can just open the slide again, and we can discuss it again if we want. Yeah. So, outraging the modesty of a woman, sir, I had discussed this judgment here previously, Aman Kumar versus State of Haryana. So, it very clearly said, the apex court very clearly said, what amounting to the ingredients basic in the section are not only that, what they really clarified here was that the act of pulling a woman, removing her dress, coupled with a request of sexual intercourse, is such as would be an outrage to the modesty of women, and knowledge that modesty is likely to be outraged is sufficient to constitute the offense without any deliberate intention, having such outrage alone for its object here. So was the main that clarification that they had given via this judgment on what is the basic definition when we talk about outraging the modesty of a woman, because clearly 354 does not really lay down all the circumstances where the modesty of a woman can be outraged.
Thank you. Next question again is by Advocate Sangakrito. He asks, how do you feel to interpret the intent to outrage?
Sir, intent, like we discussed, is mens rea and cannot be seen by any physical object. So it depends on every case to case, because facts and circumstances of every case are different here. So the intention is for the judicial minds have to be applied, keeping in mind all the evidences, all the so statements of the witnesses, every facts and circumstance, what are the circumstantial evidences leading down to the occurrence of the offense here. So intent is a very term that can be interpreted very differently in every form. So according to me, sir, intent is not just anything that you can have a very structural definition to, because it cannot be defined in or any seen as a physical object. So it depends on every case.
Well, the next question is by Advocate Shobhit Mahant. He asks, can a victim file her complaint on her behalf by someone?
Ma'am, you're not audible, sorry.
Can you hear me?
Ma'am, the voice is cracking.
Nitesh, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you well.
I think, Siddhi, there is some connection problem. Can you hear me now, Siddhi?
Ma'am, actually, there's a lot of disturbance that is coming. So I can, I know that you're speaking, but I can't figure out what you.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Whose question is this? Siddhi, can I ask? Siddhi, if you can hear me.
Sir, Nitish sir, you are audible to me very clearly.
So Advocate Shobhit Mahant's question, Nitish, if you can ask.
Shobhit Mahant.
Okay, so I think he's put it up privately to me. So
Yeah,
I'll
it's like question number 1. Can a victim file her complaint on behalf of someone on her behalf?
Can somebody else file?
Yeah,
Sir?
I think the meaning of this question is this only.
yes.
Yes,
So
sir.
some typing error. Sorry. Yes.
Sir, Shobita, yes, sir, that is there. Anybody else can definitely get the complaint registered on behalf of the victim.
So there is one more question from Priyanka Sethi. Could you elaborate on what exactly articulates as modesty?
So, Priyanka ma'am, actually the basic definition of modesty as we go by vocabulary or meaning is that the quality or state of being unassuming in the estimation of one's abilities. That is the basic definition. Modesty, when talked about in legal sense or differs, and we talk about is outraging that modesty, that sense of security that the women has, right?
So
Siddhi, you
thereafter
put
we have another question from
Janvi Taneja.
Janvi Taneja. She says, first of all, she says that she's really inspired by this webinar. She says that I wanted to know more about the prevalent view on the gender neutral laws aspect. There was a bill introduced by KTS Tulsi as well recently. Do you see the courts shifting paradigms in this context too?
So this is, I'll just read the question myself because it wasn't really clear to me.
Okay.
Thank you, Janvi. Though I wanted to know more about the prevalent view on the gender neutral laws aspect, there was a bill introduced by KTS Tulsi as well recently. Actually, like I said, it was a personal opinion while I was discussing on the gender neutral laws. I would really want maybe we can amend it or correct it in any way and get it implemented. But I don't think so. The Supreme Court in any near future is trying to consider it, because even when it lasted only for 58 days. And then after the Criminal Amendment Act 2013, it was removed, repealed. So I don't think so in any near future that is going to happen. But I personally feel that should happen, because there should be gender neutral laws. Because a lot of times, like I discussed, Janvi, females take a lot of, you can say, advantage of these laws, gender bias laws. And like I was discussing about that infamous Delhi molestation case. So in situations like these, the accused, who's really not an accused of suffering here, he's actually the one who's victimized. So that the apex court should really consider this aspect.
Thank you, Siddhi. There is another question from Sangrito. I think this is in regard of some tribal. So he says, what is the case of few tribal people wherein it's a practice maybe, does they also come under the penal frames of IPC? These tribal people may have many practices as per them that would amount to outraging in civilized society. What do you have to say on this?
Sir, actually, I'll have to look into it to be very precise, and I can really get back to you on this, because I'm really aware when we talk about tribal people and their practice maybe. Sir, they're really not aware about all the provisions of law and everything. So, Sangrito sir, I'll have to take usme. You'll have to excuse me on this, and I'll have to get back to you to be very precise.
Thank you so much, Siddhi, for the same. And then we have Priyanka Sethi again. Is apprehension more relevant in this section or intention? Does the absence of any one of them negate the offense?
So, see, the basic intent, what I really wanted to by this webinar was to talk about what are the basic ingredients, Priyanka ma'am. So while I was discussing the basic ingredients, I really tried focusing on the word intention, because intention is the basic ingredients of any offense that is defined under any law or anything. Because if the intent, right, so offense in particular is not attracted. So the more relevant in the section is the intention of the person to really outrage the modesty of the victim or the women.
So another question, this would be the last question for the day. Siddhi, this question is from my side. you know,
Cracking.
seeing the perspective of 354, wouldn't you think that there is an excess use of this? Can you hear
Sir,
me?
you're cracking. I'm really sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Anji?
Can you hear me now?
Sir, it's better, but it's still with a lot of disturbance.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
So this question is in the, you know, in the midst of the section 354, which you have explained, though it was very much informative. Don't you think that the excessive use of this section, you know, is inviting the misuse? Whenever there is even the small fights between two groups, they bring in their female family member in between, and then they misuse this section by applying it.
Nitesh, I'm really sorry. I can't understand a word. It's I'm sure is it just with me or it's with everybody. Zoya ma'am is later very clearly audible.
Yes, yes, Siddhi is clear to me. Nitesh, if you could type the question, I would ask, or
Yeah, Zoya ma'am, you're clear to me at the moment. Nitesh is not
actually, Siddhi, can you hear me? Because your voice is cracking a lot.
Yes, ma'am, I can hear you clearly.
Yes, I think Nitesh has gone. Yeah, he's here. Bye.
Right. Okay, so question is, don't you think the section 354 is
I think there is some problem at the end of Siddhi only.
Yeah.
Yes, sir, I think so. So it was quite informative, sir.
So
Siddhi
let
ma'am.
us conclude. So
Let's
let us conclude here.
yes.
Yeah, Zoya. Yeah, over to you for the thanking note, Zoya.
Yeah, Siddhi, can you hear me? I hope you're able to hear. Thanks a lot, Advocate Siddhi, for such a well articulated.
Sir, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible, Siddhi. Now you're audible. So I'm thanking you, Siddhi, now since we are concluding it. It was a very well articulated and crisp presentation on section 354 of the Indian Penal Code. I apologize for the interruptions. We all know how technology in times behave. You know, it behaves very odd.
I'm really sorry, ma'am. I think there is some uncertainty in the technology.
We are still in the process of getting used to it. But in spite of that, it was a good learning session. What I can sum up here is that this section of the IPC protects women from so many undescribed forms of, sexual advances. Now, the big responsibility lies on the prosecution to make a case and to analyze the real ingredients in the case at hand while when dealing with this section. And modesty per se can be widely interpreted, and a careful investigation is a must to protect the false implications and at the same time make justice available to the victim. I also thank Advocate Nitesh Mehra for arranging such valuable webinars on varied topics. Lastly, I would like to thank our participants for being such an attentive and wonderful as well as patient audience. I hope we all get to see each other soon. And till then, goodbye and take care.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
Zoya.
so much.
And thank you so much, Nitesh, sir, for giving us a very good exposure and a very good opportunity.
You're always blessed to have such associates with us.
Yes.
Thank you so much,
Yes,
Siddhi.
sir, but yes, to conclude it, maybe I would really like to say that yes, this section is really misused, and not just this section. A lot of sections that we discussed prior are really misused.
Actually, being the defense counsel, I am facing such cases. So therefore, I thought it to put it across. Because even when there are small fights, you know, people used to bring in their female family members in between, and then they try to use the section 354 as a tool to suppress the other side. That's really not
exactly.
That's not the meaning of this section.
And honestly, sir, I wouldn't really shy away from saying that females really, even on small fights, will just go on to say that, you know, I can do this to you and do that to you. And it really affects the other person's life and their mental peace, their families. So I have no shame in admitting that there are a number of false cases that we
I know. So, thanking you in this way, you know, there is a sword which is there in the Domestic Violence Act, and as well as these sections of 375, 354, which can be either used to cut or to use otherwise, you know.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, making it a wonderful day, you have explained the section the best of your ability, and the PPT was again very informative and presentable. So, thanks, Zoya. Thanks, Siddhi, and thanks to Jyoti also, who you know, joined with us in the last moment since Tanya couldn't came here. So we also like to thank, you know, Tanya, that she really helped.
I wanted to mention that I really wanted to thank Tanya also with the
It's very nice of you guys that you always, you know, work as a team and thank your team together. So that's the sole purpose of conducting this webinar, you know, making it more educative and bringing the team forward. Thank you all of you, and we'll connect tomorrow. And there is important topic which we are going to do tomorrow. That's how to conduct a criminal trial. So this topic has not been taken in any of the webinars. All the webinars center around the cross examinations, but here we are taking it procedurally round that how to conduct a criminal trial. So stay tuned. We'll be there tomorrow. The links will be forwarded to all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Siddhi.
Thank you, Nitesh sir.
Thank you, Siddhi.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Shobhit.